Hello everyone, this is Dr. C.S. Sanjay Sonone. Pleasure to be with you to my channel. Welcome you all to the topic of classification of cost. This topic comes under the subject cost accounting. Let us first understand what are the learning objective behind this topic. First one is to familiarize with the various classification of cost under different parameters. On the basis of certain parameters, we classify the cost. Second objective is to understand the concept of basics of classification of cost. Third objective is to study the theory of individual classified cost under various parameters. Now, classification of cost can be done in various ways, but basic four classifications we are going to learn. The first one is basis, depends on elements and nature. The second one is basis on the behavior. Third one is on the basis of functions. Fourth one is on the basis of identity. Let us first understand what is classification of cost. Classification of cost indicates categorizing the item of cost in a logical manner for the purpose of managerial decision, including reduction of cost. Now, first classification is on the basis of elements and nature. On the basis of elements and nature, the three categories are there. First one is material cost, second one is labor cost, and third one is overhead. On the basis of behavior, the costs are classified as fixed cost, variable cost, and third one semi-variable cost, which is also called as a semi-fixed cost. On the basis of functions, those are classified as factory cost, administration cost, and selling and distribution cost. On the basis of identity, they are classified as either direct cost or indirect cost. Now let us come to the first one, basis of element or nature. The classification is the analytical classification of cost on the broad category based on nature of expenses, and on this basis we classify as material, labor or overheads. If you look at the material, it is the cost of commodities supplied to production. Now, cost of commodity includes the purchase cost, and that also includes the incidental cost to the purchase of materials. So we can have the illustrations as material cost includes cost of raw materials, cost of consumables, and carriage inwards. Second one is labor cost. It is the cost incurred towards payment of wages, remuneration to workers or employees. Now this cost includes the cost of employee benefits and cost incurred on labor. So not only the remuneration, what is paid to the labor, but all incidental amenities, the expenses incurred on those are included under labor cost. So we can say labor wages and training expenses also are classified as labor cost. Third category is overheads. These are the costs incurred which are other than material and labor. Now these expenses are on account of activities like utility and service charges. So we can classify those expenses. Let us say electricity charges or factory rent. These are neither the material cost nor the labor cost, and this comes under the third category called as overheads. On the basis of behavior, three classifications are there: fixed cost, variable cost, semi-variable cost, and semi-fixed cost. Now, what is the category under behavior? In this, cost is categorized on the basis of behavior influenced by volume, efficiency, and production changes. So we find out the effect on the cost on the basis of the change in the level of production. So let us understand the basis of behavior. It is based on what is the ultimate effect on total cost and per unit cost. Now if you look at the fixed cost, the total cost is always constant, whereas per unit cost changes with level of production. So we can say in case of a fixed cost, total cost is constant, which remains constant irrespective of production level. But as the production level increases, the cost per unit decreases. Now few examples are there like factory rent, manager salary. Now these expenses are fixed in a nature, but as the volume of production increases, the per unit cost gets reduced. The second one is variable cost. Now here the total cost keeps on changing with the level of production, but per unit cost remains constant. So we can say total cost changes with the level of production. As the production is higher, the total cost keeps on increasing. If the production is lower, the cost goes down. Whereas the effect on the per unit cost is higher the production, higher the total cost, but cost per unit remains same. There is no change in the cost per unit. The example of variable cost are raw material cost, workers' wages. Now these are the costs which remains constant per unit. Now third category is semi-variable or semi-fixed cost. Now here the total cost changes or sometimes remains constant as per the change in the level of production. So there is no consistency in increase or decrease in the total cost. At the same time, a per unit cost also behaves the same way. The per unit cost is higher, and some when the production is increased, it may get reduced also, or it may increase. So it goes on both the directions, upward and downward. So we can summarize this as total cost changes but not in the same proportion. The cost varies with level of production but not in the same proportion of production level. It means if the production is double, the total cost will not double, it will increase. So if the production is double means increase by 100%, then total cost may vary by 50% or it may vary by 120% also. Now if you look at the effect on the per unit cost, the per unit cost also behaves in the same way. If there is an increase in production, the per unit cost may get reduced or it may increase also. Now all these three costs, fixed cost, variable cost and semi-variable cost, we have to study with reference to some diagrams. Now here we can see the fixed cost. As we have already studied that the fixed cost is constant, it remains constant irrespective of level of production. Now here you can see in the illustration given, now per units produced are 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 9. Now total cost is 600 rupees. Now when the output is 0 unit, we are incurring 600 rupees. Now example of this is factory rent. We are paying a factory rent irrespective of production level. So there is a 0 production, we pay 600 rupees. If there is an output of 6 units, still we pay 600 rupees. Now what is the ultimate effect on the per unit cost? Now per unit cost for 1 unit will be worked out as 600 rupees. That is total cost 600 divided by 1. Now if the production is double, let us say production is 2 units. Now the total cost remains same at 600. But cost per unit is calculated again as total cost 600, number of units produced 2. So the cost per unit is rupees 300. Now you can see that when the production is increased from 1 unit to 2 unit, total cost has remained same to 600 rupees only, whereas cost per unit has decreased from 600 to 300. So here as the production keeps on increasing, the cost per unit decreases. The reason is that the total cost is constant and divided by number of units produced. Higher the production, the cost per unit is low. Now you can see in the graph also, the units produced is the x-axis, total cost is the y-axis. When output is 1 unit, cost per unit is 600, which is shown with a red color. Now when the production is 2, it has gone to 300. So curve is going downwards. It is going downwards. Higher the production, lower the cost per unit. Whereas you can see the total cost line. Total cost line is parallel to the x-axis. It remains constant irrespective of production level. Now let us come to the next one, variable cost. Now in case of a variable cost, this cost changes with level of production. Higher the production, higher the cost. Whereas the per unit cost is always constant. Example is a raw material cost. Now you can see in the table, units produced are given as 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 and 9. Now what is the cost? For 0 units, absolutely the cost is 0. But we know that the cost per unit is 10. We are taking that into account. When the output is 1 unit, our cost is 10 rupees. Obviously cost per unit is also 10. When output is increased to 2, we are incurring per unit cost rupees 10. So our total cost is work out as 20. So if the production is double, our cost is double. Now let us go further in the table. If you look at the row of a 4 units produced, per unit cost is 10 rupees only because the consumption of raw material remains constant for a per unit. So our cost per unit is rupees 10. So when you manufacture 4 units, our total cost is rupees 40. Now here we can say the output is 1, total cost is 10. Output is 4, our total cost is 40. So it has increased exactly 4 times. So it increases in proportion to the level of production. If the production is double, the total cost will be double. However, cost per unit remains same. Now you can see this in a whatever is mentioned in the table in the diagram, where x-axis is units produced and total cost is shown on the y-axis. Now red line indicates your cost per unit. So whether you manufacture 1 unit, 2 units, 4 unit, your cost per unit is constant, which is shown in the red color, so which is parallel to x-axis. So irrespective of production level, your cost per unit is remaining same. If you look at the total cost, it keeps on increasing. Higher the production, higher the cost. Now this is the variable cost where cost per unit remains constant and production cost varies with the level of production. Now third category is a semi-variable cost and semi-fixed cost. Really it is a blending of fixed and variable cost in which there are some components of a variable nature, there are some components of a fixed nature. Now let us look at the table. The units produced are 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7. Now here the total cost is the main component of the cost and cost per unit is a calculated figure. Because cost per unit, here we cannot calculate the actual cost incurred with a number of units produced. These costs are generally incurred in a lump sum. Now total cost is for 1 unit is 400. So obviously per unit cost works out to 400. If the production is double, your fixed cost, your total cost is not changing, so it remains at 400 only. As a result of this, our per unit cost gets reduced to rupees 200 per unit. Now if your production is now double, let us say it is 4 units, your total cost is increasing by 200 rupees. From 400 to it is becoming 600. Now when total cost is 600, our per unit cost works out to rupees 150. Now here if you compare with the earlier row where 3 units are manufactured, our total cost is 400. So per unit cost was 133 rupees 33. When the output is 4 units, our per unit cost has increased. Our total cost has increased from 400 to 600. Now here the output has increased by 33% from 3 to 4, 33%, whereas total cost has increased by 50% from 400 to 600 means 400 plus 200, 6, that is work out to 600. Now, but our cost per unit has gone up from 133 to 150. If you look at the earlier rows, 2 units, it was 200 per unit. Now it has come to 133.33. If the production is further increased, it has increased to 150. If the production is further increased, it has gone down to 100 rupees. If the production is further increased, it has gone up now by 1 to 114 rupees 29 paise. So you can see at the per unit column, it keeps on fluctuating with the level of production. The cost per unit sometimes goes up, sometimes goes down. Whereas obviously total cost has to go up with the level of production and total cost increases, but not in the same proportion of the production. So if the output is 1, 400, output is 2, still 400. There is a 0% increase. So there is no consistency in the increase or decrease in the total cost. You can look at the graph. The units produced x-axis, total cost is on y-axis. Now cost per unit has gone down when the output changed from 1 to 2. It was 400, now it has gone to 200, then it has gone further down. When the production reaches to 4, the cost per unit increased now. Again at production is 6, the cost per unit has decreased. So cost per unit is going up and down. Now it is not dependent on whether the production is increasing or decreasing. There is no consistency in the cost per unit. But total cost keeps on increasing, but it is not increasing in the same proportion. Sometimes it remains constant, sometimes it increases, and the increase is not in proportion. Now let us come to the next one. It is classified on the basis of behavior. And the next category is basis of function. Now on the basis of function, what activity you are doing, based on that it is categorized. So factory cost, administration cost, selling and distribution cost. In this, cost is categorized on the basis of functional activity of the organization, such as production, administration, and marketing. Now let us look at the factory cost. These are the expenses incurred at the place of manufacture, the place where we carry out the production activity or rendering a services. Now these expenses are generally a raw material consumed or workers' wages that we are paying, or in a factory we are spending the money on the factory rent. So these are the expenses incurred in a factory. So all expenses incurred at the place of manufacture are called as a factory cost, because the place of manufacture is called as factory. The another category is administration cost. These are the expenses incurred at the place of administration. Place of administration means the place where the administrative work is done. Now example of these expenses are office rent, salaries to manager, directors, professional fees, office staff salaries, repairs of office. Now these expenses are incurred for administrative purposes, and that is why it is called as an administrative cost. These are non-production expenses. These expenses have no direct relation with the production. Now third function is selling and distribution. Now selling and distribution means the expenses are incurred at the place of sales depot. This could be before effecting the sales or after effecting the sales. Till the time the sales are effected, those are classified as selling expenses. Now these expenses are for marketing a product. Examples are advertisement, sales commission, salaries of sales staff, whereas certain expenses are incurred after the sales are finalized. Now these expenses are generally called as distribution expenses. Now examples are carriage outward, godown rent, delivery van expenses. These are the common expenses which are incurred for distribution of a product. So we are actually showing these two things together, selling and distribution cost. So we can summarize as selling and distribution cost is the expenses incurred on marketing a product or distribution of a product. Now next category is on the basis of identity. Identity means we call on the basis of its chargeability. In this, cost is categorized on the basis of traceability or identity of expenses. Now whenever we manufacture any product, if the cost can be linked to it or it cannot be linked to it, on the basis of that we have the classifications. Now let us look what is the direct cost. Cost which can be identified and chargeable to any one specific product. For example, purchase of raw material, carriage outward, workers' wages. Here, when we spend the expenses, we immediately identify for which product these expenses are we are incurring. So when we can identify the expenses to any one specific product, we call that as direct cost. The second category is indirect cost. In indirect cost, cost which cannot be identified and chargeable to any one specific product. So when you incur the expenses, you cannot say that I am incurring for this specific product. Now these expenses are apportioned to multiple products on the basis of scientific, like area occupied, number of electric points, horsepowers. Now let us take few examples of this. Material consumables. Now consumables are used while manufacturing the many products. So it can be for manufacture a product A also, B also, C also. So we cannot say that it is incurred only for A. So when we incur expenses on material consumables, these are called as indirect cost and which has to be apportioned to multiple products. Similarly, supervisor who is in charge of multiple departments and having production of multiple products, the supervisor salary is apportioned among the products on the basis of the time he is devoting to it. Similarly, factory rent. Factory rent is incurred for paying a rent on the factory which is used for manufacture of multiple products. So let us say only two products are manufactured, X and Y. So X covers 60% area of the factory and Y covers 40% area of the factory. Now here the basis of allocation could be 60-40. So factory rent of 10,000 will be allocated as 6,000 for product X and 4,000 for product Y. Now this is what the indirect cost is, where you cannot identify a single product and it has to be apportioned on the basis of some scientific. Now let us look at all this in a lump sum. Classification of cost, elements, nature, behavior, function, identity. Elements and nature, material cost, labor cost, overheads. On the basis of behavior, fixed cost, variable cost, semi-variable cost, or what we call as a semi-fixed cost. On the basis of function, factory cost, administration cost, selling and distribution cost. On the basis of identity, is a direct cost and indirect cost. Now let us come to the preparation of a cost sheet. When you prepare a cost sheet, the costs are classified basically as per the functions. It is a factory cost, administration cost, and selling and distribution cost. Now this factory cost is further classified as a direct cost and indirect cost. Now total of direct cost is called as a prime cost. Total of indirect cost incurred in a factory is called as factory overheads. Now this direct cost incurred in a factory is further classified as material cost, labor cost, and overheads. So we can say that all expenses incurred in a factory which are a direct cost are called as prime cost, This prime cost consists of direct material cost, direct labor cost, and direct overheads, which are also called as a direct expenses. So first we take all direct costs incurred in a factory, we compute a prime cost. After computing a prime cost, we have to add in this all indirect costs incurred in the factory, which are factory overheads. Deducted from that, sale of a factory scrap, and then we get a result called as a works cost before adjusting work in progress. Now to this we make adjustment of opening stock of work in progress and closing stock of work in progress. The ultimate effect of that is works cost. This works cost is also called as a factory cost. In a works cost, we are adding administrative cost. If we add administrative cost, the result we get is cost of production. Now, in a cost of production, we make an adjustments for opening stock of finished goods less closing stock of finished goods. The ultimate result is cost of goods sold. In this cost of goods sold, if you add all selling and distribution expenses, we get a result what is called as cost of sales. In cost of sales, if you add the profit margin, our ultimate effect is sales. Now, this is how the cost sheet is prepared. Now, thank you very much for being with me.